Hi there, Bill.
Hey, David. Great to
We
talk
are
to you.
live, if I'm not much mistaken. Thanks everybody for joining us tonight. I'm David Leigh from the James Bond Dossier, and you are.
I'm Bill Koenig with the Spy Command. And
There
as
we
I was
go.
saying before, I was so rudely interrupted 7 months ago or whatever it was. No, that's a joke. That's a joke. We were doing these on a semi-regular basis, and then real life intervened, and that's how real life works. But it's really great to do these again. So
It is, yes. Yeah. I always used to enjoy these, and yeah, I wasn't intending to take such a break, but I'm back, and we'll see if we can keep these going on a bit more of a regular basis. It certainly won't ever be weekly or anything like that, but once a month, maybe once every couple of weeks, perhaps, maybe.
maybe, but there's a lot talked about, and we'll get to that. Because since we did the
Absolutely.
last one, No Time to Die came out, and that's going to be part of
Yes.
what we'll be talking about.
Was there a
Uh,
James Bond film?
well, some would say no. Those were particularly cynical folks. There certainly was, and it certainly caused a lot of stir. But I'm thinking about how, boy, they were like, I think this was a very divisive movie. There were like some people who were like really, really, and I'm sorry if you believe in spoilers 6 months after movies come out. I'm sorry, but yeah, but there were a lot of people who were pissed off that James Bond got killed, and you
What?
know what?
What? No.
Yeah,
You've ruined it for me now.
sorry to break it to you. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
It was funny. I saw this one YouTube video, and it was not a James Bond YouTuber. It was one of these more general ones, and these guys, it's like
Cheers,
one
by
of.
the way.
Oh, cheers! Excellent. Um,
It is evening here.
Yeah, and it was I saw this one YouTube video, and this guy did not like No Time to Die, and he kept about every minute or so he had this video. It was an excerpt from a Fast and Furious movie with Vin Diesel saying family, and then he did it like 6 7 times in the course of the video, and I'm thinking, boy, that's getting a little tiresome. But then fast forward to a few months ago, or not a few months ago, it was like a few months later. Uh, Barbara Broccoli's talking to the Hollywood Reporter on one of their podcasts, and she kept talking about, oh, Bond's family and his MI6 family, but his real family. And she's talking about family, family, family. I'm thinking, boy, I guess I owe that one YouTube guy an apology for thinking what
Yeah.
I thought, because he found something that I had passed over, but like, oh man,
Yeah, and we actually haven't spoken about No Time to Die at all before now.
no.
Yeah, it's amazing, and I because you I think quite liked it, didn't you?
Well, I gave it an A-, but my
Well, that's liking it quite a lot.
well, yeah, but my thinking was I knew how it was going to end because it had been spoiled for me in a very explicit way. It wasn't like stumbling it on in the internet. It's like somebody telling me he's going to die. And it's like it's gonna like he has a daughter and he has this. And he like told me all this stuff, and it's like I didn't even ask for it. And so when I watched the movie, knowing how it was going to end, so I assessed, well, how did they handle the death scene? Well, the death scene was emotional, so that was fun. But I could never really evaluate should he have died anyway. But according to Daniel Craig, oh, I always wanted to do this. But I'm very skeptical about that, given that Daniel Craig is also the same guy who claimed to have Quantum of Solace. Was my idea to call it that, and it's like those Fleming titles don't mean anything. Don't mean
Yeah,
anything, really. Doctor No,
I
Goldfinger don't
know.
mean
I'm
anything.
skeptical too because it's just like every film. There's a lot of revisionism that goes on regarding the previous films. So yeah, I'm not really sure about that either. But I think it's fairly clear though that the reason Danny Boyle left was because he didn't want to kill Bond off.
Exactly. That's clearly what happened. And because I've mentioned this before, eh, this is part of the hazards of doing the Bond 25 timeline. So there were like two tabloid stories. One said Boyle didn't want to kill him off, and the
Yep,
other
I
said,
remember
oh,
them.
Boyle wanted to kill him off. And I forget, the Sun was one, and I forget the other. Well, okay, clearly the tabloids kind of like, they get nuggets and whatever, but clearly killing Bond was on the table. And by the way, David, are you hearing an echo? I'm hearing an echo of me.
It's possible because of my audio setup at the moment, because my previous right.
Oh, now I'm not hearing anything. I should have shut up. Now I'm not hearing anything. I hope I didn't mess everything up for this live stream, but I probably did, given my nature. Well, anyway, for those of you who are hearing me, I just said that over the course of however long it was, and I'd have to look up the precise dates, the Sun said Boyle didn't want to kill him off, and then the Daily Star, I think it was, said no, it was Boyle wanted to kill him off. So clearly, the clue was in front of us all along that they wanted to kill us all. Anyway, right now I'm not seeing David. Well, we promised you tech issues, so here they are. I just got a question. Did I kill off David? No, I didn't. I'm going to assume everyone can hear me. No, I didn't kill David off. We're having it's part of these chats. We're guaranteed to have tech issues. So David fell off my screens. Like, he's thousands of miles from me, so it's like, not me. A comment, the first casualty. Oh no. Oh no. So, while we wait for David to return, anyway, I'll just bring up something about the box office, which was No Time to Die was the number 2. I think David's coming back. Just a second. David's back. Yay. Now except I can't hear him. Oh dear. David, can you hear me? Oh, David disappeared. All right, so I'll just assuming everyone can hear me, I was just going to say, so No Time to Die ended up global box office of, I didn't look it up, about 745 million, something like that. It was number 2 among non-Chinese movies, which is very good, but it was only number 7 in the US, and I've pondered, why did it not do better? And I don't have a definitive answer, but can see David, but no audio. That's a comment that just came in. So while under the conditions of pandemic, No Time to Die did pretty well, I would have to think that they would be somewhat concerned about that US box office figure because, again, they were number 7. They were behind Eternals. Eternals? Like, Eternals was considered like one of the worst performing Marvel movies ever, and it did like 3 million better than No Time to Die. Again, US only. But like, what's going on here? And I don't know. I mean, I can speculate all day about it, but if I were MGM and if I were Eon, I would be somewhat concerned. David just tried to come in and then he disappeared again. Because the movie cost at about 300 million to make, and then probably cost another 100 or million or more to market. And did it make money on its theatrical release? I don't know. I suspect it didn't. Oh, David's back. Was I prattling on? Did everybody hear what I was just saying about the box office?
Oh, good Lord. Yeah, Bill, did you kill off David? No, no, he didn't. Yeah. Okay, I've changed my mic and my headphones and everything, so that must have been causing an issue. But right, I'm going to stick with this and we'll see how we go.
It sounds good. Well, while you were fixing your microphone situation, I was commenting about the box office. It's like it was number.
I could hear you,
You
so
heard
keep
all that?
going.
Okay, that's fine.
Keep
Um,
going.
well, I'm just saying, again, it's pretty good, although it got blown away by Spider-Man at the very end of the year, because people were saying there's no way anyone can make $1 billion thing, and then
Hmm.
Spider-Man comes along. Well, I guess I guess that's out the window. But again, they're number 2 globally, but number 7 in the US. And like, I don't know exactly why it was so soft. I mean, 161 million, I think it was. That's not a flop by any means,
Hmm.
but it didn't do as well as Eternals. Eternals, like, like Eternals was written up as like the worst performing Marvel movie
Hmm.
ever, and like it didn't do better than that. And I have some ideas, but I don't know. I don't know how closely you follow the box office, but just wondering your thoughts.
Yeah, I stopped following quite some time ago. I was following the first few weeks of No Time to Die just to see where it was going, and I guess I was following a bit with Spider-Man, but yeah, I kind of gave up. I lost interest.
Well, you didn't have to follow Spider-Man long. It had like 1 billion after a week or 10
Right.
days, whatever. Like, what? That
Yeah.
that was supposed to be impossible.
Yeah. But yeah, I think considering the situation, No Time to Die did pretty well. It's it was less than ideal in many respects. The pandemic, of course, but also the fact that it was so long after the previous film, and people don't want to wait a long time between different installments in a franchise. They want to film every 2 or 3 years, and it's clear from the from the Bond fans that I know, people accept that probably it's not going to happen every 2 years, but 3 years, yes, and 4 years is too long, and 5 6 years is just way too long. It's just like it's almost it's long enough for people who get into Bond for Inspector. They by the time of this film, they've grown out of it almost, But if you hit them every couple of years or every 3 years, you just you drip feeding them Bond, 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 and it helps maintain fandom. I think, especially of a new generation. We're going to still carry on even if it's every 10 years for as long as we can anyway. But if that you need to bring new Bond fans in, and when I was a kid. Most of the Bond films we used to see on the TV. My first experience was on the big screen, but then it was all the Connery movies, and it was a big family event, like it is for a lot of kids in the UK.
Oh yeah.
I don't know how much that it still is, but it was a highlight of the week, and I remember when From Russia with Love was. Oh, God. I mangled that. From Russia with Love was on, and it's like everybody in the class apart from one girl had seen it. It was just like the whole school watched the Bond film which was on a Sunday night, I seem to remember.
Well, and I'm older than you, and this was before Bond was even on TV. So they initially, for the first four, was like one every year. And then, like, they couldn't maintain that because the films kept getting bigger and bigger. But so then what United Artists started doing was having double features come out in the off years between releases. So, for example, Thunderball came out at Christmas of '65. So in '66, they came out with a Goldfinger Dr. No double feature. And I didn't see that, but I remember in 1970 going to see You Only Live Twice Thunderball double feature. They showed You Only Live Twice first because it was the more recent of the two. Mm-hmm. But again, it was like the movies, they weren't so interconnected, so you could do that. You could change up the order. And I saw just personally, I saw that double feature. I saw Dr. No, From Russia with Love double feature in '71. I saw Thunderball, You Only Live Twice again in '74. They put that out just before Thunderball went on TV. I mean, they kept Bond out there, so like you knew about Bond in between the releases. And now it's like, we'll put them out when we feel like it. And I don't know. I keep thinking that's going to catch up with them sooner or later. It hasn't so far. In 2012, it had been 4 years between movies, but it was the 50th anniversary. And also there was the Olympics thing, and you had Daniel Craig playing James Bond with Queen Elizabeth with a featured mini movie directed by Danny Boyle, ironically.
Because the thing is, I remember when Skyfall did so well, and I remember saying at the time that I thought a lot of the reason was because of the Olympics, and that it was because there was a big new Cool Britannia thing, and there was also there was this mini Bond film, and that just put Bond on everybody's screen around the world who was watching the Olympics opening ceremony, and that was a huge advertising for Skyfall, and people just didn't believe me about that, but I still think that is the case.
I agree with you, because one of the tabloids, I forget, it was the Daily Mail or whichever one, when they were filming that mini movie for the Olympics, wrote it up really big. And of course, everybody pretended, oh, we don't know what you're talking about. I mean, when you're having a helicopter fly under London Bridge or whatever it was, it's like, of course everyone's going to notice. and that was like months before the opening ceremonies, and and I remember when that because of course here in the States, we're 5 hours behind London, and so like I remember, hey, it turns out that thing about the opening ceremonies is true.
Mhm.
It's a Bond thing, and then like somebody that I used to know said, that's a spoiler. I said, it's the Olympics are a major news event. There's no spoilers with news. Okay. Stop it. Just stop it. But this guy is a jackass. So anyway, but no, I think the Olympics, I think it was perfectly, it just fell together perfectly because the Olympics were like in the late summer and Skyfall was coming out, I think in October in the UK and early November in the US. I just think it was just perfect. The problem with No Time to Die, it wasn't so perfect. There was no Olympics. And of course, you had all these delays related to COVID. And you had there were a total of 5 delays.
Yeah.
2 delays were having to do with like getting rid of Danny Boyle. And then then there were 3 COVID delays. So um, it, it, it just didn't work out as well. Again, it's a very, again, it did fine releasing a movie in a pandemic and delays because of the pandemic. And it's certainly not a flop. And anybody who calls it a flop is just exaggerating. But I do think that, again, there's something about the US bothers me. And if I were MGM and if I were Amazon, who's in the process of buying MGM, but the deal isn't finished yet, I would take a really close look at what happened. And I think I'll probably get in trouble for saying this. I think part of it is, Eon claims, Michael G. Wilson said this in 2015. Oh, we do all the marketing. The studio just executes our plan. And I think Eon has been, doing the same stale marketing plan since at least 1997, where they trash the early movies. Oh, those movies are so bad, but these new movies are really great, especially when it comes to women. And I think it really, and they doubled down on that strategy with No Time to Die. You had Lashana Lynch talking about tampons. You had Cary Fukunaga talking about, oh yeah, Connery Bond, he was a rapist. It's like, is this how you market your movie? It's like, okay, if you don't want to address that stuff, fine, just don't mention it. But no, they keep bringing all this crap up, and it's like, oh yeah, let's, and we should go see a James Bond movie because why?
Yeah.
And again, that's a US based comment. I mean, of course, the UK is like, Bond's home, and, the UK is always going to rally to Bond and other countries as well. But I think Eon needs to revisit its US marketing strategy because, it's just
Well,
like,
they just need to shut up sometimes.
yeah, exactly. I mean, Fukunaga, it wasn't quite as bad as when Craig said, I'd rather slit my wrist than play Bond, but it was definitely a distraction. And because people jumped on that, like, why are you talking about this? Just be quiet. Just, say why your movie's good. That's what we're looking for you to say.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think Eon is very much stuck in the past, and I've seen it again and again, and over decades that they don't seem to really know what they're doing a lot of the time, and which actually. This wasn't my plan, but that kind of leads me into something else I wanted to talk about, which is, where are they going to go now, and what are they going to do about signing up a new Bond? Because there was a guy from, I think it was Deadline, and he mentioned on
Yes.
Twitter that he'd heard that there was going to be a new actor announcement this year.
Yes, the guy's name is Justin Kroll. He used to work for Variety, then he jumped over to Deadline. And hate to bring up a Spider-Man reference, but my spider sense was tingling on that because, okay, how much information do you really know? Because if he had hard information, he wouldn't be writing a tweet. He'd be writing a story. But he didn't write a story. He just put out a tweet or two and just how much do you really know? And then Baz Baba Boy got into the act a week or so later, and he was saying, well, they want to do like a quintet and with a new Bond. They want someone younger that could do 5. Like, really, Baz? Yeah, what hard information? And he had this little tease at the end of his because it wasn't a complete story. It was like an item as part of a longer column.
Yeah,
And he
I
said,
haven't seen this actually. This is all new to me.
it's on the Bond 26 timeline. Yes, I started a Bond 26 timeline. And it's
I didn't know you'd started it yet.
I did because people started coming to me and said, are you going to do a Bond 26 timeline? Because if you don't, I'll do one. And I thought, no. It's like, I'm not sure I want to do a Bond 26 timeline, but if anyone's going to do it, it's going to be me. So yes, I started. It's only like 5 items at this point. But, so Baz gets in the act and he says this stuff. But again, he's acting as if he knows more than he's actually demonstrating to his readers. And at the very end, he has this thing, oh, I heard this rumor, and he doesn't say what the rumor is. Like, oh, shut up, Baz. Yeah. Just be quiet. If you got something, say it. Don't tease us. And
I know something you don't know.
Exactly.
Oh, what is it?
Yes.
But I'm not going to tell you.
Exactly. And it's like, oh, come on. And the Justin Kroll thing was like in a similar vein, not as obnoxious as Baz was with that thing. So, just get back to me when you know something and are ready to talk about it.
I'm skeptical because I don't think that's how Eon works. I think they're not. I can't see that they're far enough down the planning a new film, let alone 5 films, and until they've got some idea of what they want to do and the direction they want to go, I don't think they're even going to start looking for anybody. And I think Barbara Broccoli said that they'd start the process this year, but it's only February, and at the rate that Eon usually move, it's not going to be until the middle of the year before they actually do anything with that.
At the start of this live stream, I said, Eon's doing victory laps. And then I interrupted myself and said, victory laps? They're doing a victory marathon. And in terms of a marathon, they're not even at mile 10 yet. They're still so celebrating, oh, No Time to Die is so wonderful. And it's like, guys, it's like, I get it. And and part of this is posturing for award season, as they call. They got a few BAFTA nominations. And next Tuesday are the Oscar nominations. So some of this is posturing for that, but it's just like, again, I can't take much more about the whole victory lap thing. And that's one reason why in the blog in the past 2 weeks, I went back to do something. I went back and reposted some things and I updated them. So I did a 6-part thing about Dr. No, and I did another 3-part thing about Dr. No. The first part I originally did in 2012, and the second part I originally did in 2016. And
hey, that's Eon kind of timing.
Yeah. Yeah, because God, it's like it's like, oh, the way Eon works, it's like, oh, the 60th anniversary is in October. We should start thinking about this in maybe September. But my point being is like, rather than get caught up in how obnoxious Eon can be and some of the comments Barbara Broccoli has made, I decided, what, I'm gonna make more positive use of my time and repurpose and update some things I'd done before, because the basic facts haven't changed, but just to remind people about this stuff. Because it's really amazing that Dr. No even got made at all. You had, Broccoli and Saltzman, being introduced to each other by Wolf Mankiewicz. You had, a very modest budget, and then they ran over the budget. And then you had this company that did the completion bond take control of it in post-production.
Bond,
Jack,
completion Bond.
yeah, and Jack Lord arrived late, and they fell behind schedule by a half day on the first day, and there were all sorts of.
That's a good start, isn't it?
It is, and there were all sorts of problems with weather and all this stuff. I mean, it's really amazing that the movie turned out as well as it did. I mean, it's just it's just amazing. And you know, when we say Eon doesn't know what they're doing, you know what? Eon kind of fell into luck at the very start. And also, I mean, this also really irritates me. Is like Harry Saltzman was as much a part of that beginning. And of
Yes,
course,
absolutely.
but Eon, like they don't pretend he doesn't exist, but they try to minimize his involvement. But no, I mean, if it were like just Broccoli by himself, we would not have the series we had. And again, that combination of Broccoli and Saltzman didn't last that long. They quickly got into loggerheads, but it again, it was just, it was, I hate to say this, it's like lightning in the bottle. The whole 1960s spy craze was lightning in the bottle, because all this stuff just happens and it's like really hard to recreate. And I've seen, this is on the MI6 HQ message board. This was years ago. I saw somebody actually say, "Oh, Saltzman wasn't a real producer." Wasn't a real producer.
Right, yeah.
He was in charge of the script development in the early films. Because it was Saltzman who brought in Paul Dane to rewrite Maybaum for Goldfinger. It was Saltzman who brought in John Hopkins to rewrite Maybaum for Thunderball. I mean, it's
yeah. I mean, both of them really were real producers. It's the current producers who are maybe lacking credentials because they've got nothing outside Bond, and they were handed that on a plate.
Right. Here in the U.S., there's a cliche about people are people were born on. This is a baseball reference. They were born on third base.
I know nothing about baseball.
Well, it's just people were born on third base and thought they hit a triple. It's just the whole point of the joke is they're they were born into it, and they were not, they didn't do it themselves. They stepped on the shoulders of giants. That's somebody once said that to me. But of course there are members of what I call FOE, Friends of Eon, who are just, Mike and Barbara are so great. And it's like, guys, it's like, now I would say, just to be clear, I think Michael G. Wilson and Barbara Broccoli, it does take talent to keep something like that going. I wouldn't deny that in the world, but to make it sound like somebody, and I'll not mention his name, like was saying, "Oh, the Academy Award should give them a Thalberg Award." No, they shouldn't. There are more deserving people ahead in the line for that. Could the guy with the headphones take a break with his whining and let David speak for a bit? Okay, David, go ahead.
That wasn't very polite.
I'm used to it.
You've thrown the ball into my court, and I've just dropped it. So, we were talking about Dr. No and how well it turned out. What we haven't mentioned so far is the 60th anniversary, because the 60th anniversary of Dr. No is the 60th anniversary of the Bond series, and when you think about it, it's an extraordinary run of time for anything to go on. It's just sometimes they talk about companies, and there's a kind of life cycle of companies, and it can, most companies don't last more than a couple of decades. I think most companies don't last even a single decade, and but there are also these companies that just keep going on and on and on, and you know, obviously, Facebook and these people aren't them. They're not old enough, and we don't know what their future is. But you think about brands like Hoover, which is still going, and Unilever and Ford and things like that. But just because they become massive companies doesn't mean that they can continue forever. There's gonna, with the move to electric cars, we don't know what's going to happen with the traditional car industry, for example. So those names may get swallowed up, or the companies may get swallowed up, and the brands existing inside God, I can't remember Elon Musk's company at the moment, Tesla.
Tesla.
and uh, for a film series to last for 6 decades, it's incredible. You know,
Just I'm sorry, real quick. I am very familiar with Ford because I covered them from 2001 to 2008, and they've had a mix of family members and professional managers. They are currently in their 5th generation. Bill Ford is chairman. He had been CEO and then he yielded it, but he's still around. And but that's a very unusual case because the usual excuse me is the usual thing is third generation is really, after third generation it's really hard to maintain control.
Yeah, and I think there's a good reason for that as well. It's because the first generation, obviously, that they did all the hard work and they had the talent. The second generation, they may have been brought up within the company, and they may have gained experience through just hands on, but by the time of the third generation, I think it's much more difficult because I think many people in that position are that they just feel so entitled to it,
Yes.
and they haven't put the hard work in. They haven't even put the hard work in to kind of learn the ropes, and so that's when things fall apart.
You know what, in the case, I don't want to go too far afield, but in the case of Ford, there was a special thing where Henry Ford, the original Henry Ford, was the first generation. Edsel Ford, his son, was the second generation. And then Edsel Ford had cancer and died. And so like the U.S. Defense Department said, they needed Ford to supply planes and stuff for World War II. It's like, so like Henry Ford II, the original Henry Ford's grandson, and Edsel Ford's son, they excused him and like, you're going back to try and make sense of this company because we need it to run right to supply planes and war material. That's an unusual occurrence, but that's what happened, and that helped set the stage for the Ford family maintaining control
Yeah,
of the
but
company to this day.
but I just wonder. I wonder how, as Michael G. Wilson steps back, as he's bound to soon, and when Barbara Broccoli hands over the reins, I just wonder. I wonder if Eon is still controlled by the Broccoli family at that stage, whether how well that will go.
I think this is a really critical transition. Again, he just turned 80. Michael G. Wilson just turned 80. And when that birthday came up, I had actually done a prepared obituary for when the time came. And I decided, this is a major birthday. So I copied that obituary, retopped it, rewrote the first few paragraphs and turned it in more of a biography for his 80th birthday, because he was a major figure. He was the guy who Cubby turned to in terms of the negotiations with Saltzman when when the partnership broke up in the 70s. And I mean, he is a major figure. I wouldn't deny that for a minute, but he's 80 now, and to be honest, he doesn't look that great. I mean, during the premiere, he was moving kind of slow. He's 80, like of course he's moving kind of
Yeah.
slow, but it looked like he was maybe wearing hearing aids or something. But and during the official No Time to Die podcast, he sounded kind of rough. And again, that's not a criticism; it's just a basic observation. And transition planning is always part of something running a business.
No, absolutely right. But it's just given that Eon seems to be so reticent a lot of the time of doing any kind of prior planning. I just wonder how. Well, I wonder what the situation is with them, and what the situation, how the situation will pan out. But I don't know. But 60 years is an amazing thing.
It is, but something I think to look forward to, or at least to keep an eye on. So Amazon agreed I think it was May, to agreed to buy MGM. That deal's not final yet, and
No.
what happens after that?
Yeah, I think that's very interesting. That is because I'm sure that Amazon are going to pressurize Eon to produce something a bit more often.
Yeah, and again, the way things have been until now is, while Eon has had the creative control, they still needed to go to MGM for approval for budgets and and when casting a Bond. I mean, yes, Barbara Broccoli championed Daniel Craig ferociously, but MGM still needed to sign off on it at the time. And will we see this again? Plus, Wilson and Broccoli have they have lobbied on behalf of two current MGM film executives. One's named DeLuca, the other's named Abdi, and they made very clear they would prefer Amazon keep them on board. But we'll see. I mean, there are a number of decisions that have to be made. Like, for example, assuming the deal closes, does Amazon merge Amazon Studios into MGM? If so, do they keep those two executives? I mean, a lot of fans aren't interested in this stuff, but these are very important decisions that will have a big impact on Bond in the future. And there's no way to tell. We'll see.
Okay, 60 years of Bond. Which is your favorite decade of Bond?
Has to be the 60s, because that's the one I joined in, because I mean, the first one I saw was Thunderball. I saw You Only Live Twice. I saw the earlier three later in double features. But at the same time, some of my Bond friends of my age, they're again, the one guy briefly mentioned earlier, he calls 71 to 80 to 85 the Dark Ages. Like, what are you talking about? But I mean, when I found out, I thought originally Diamonds Are Forever was it. I thought, that's it. They're not going to make it more. And then someone said, no, they're going to make some. What do you mean? And it's like, well, they said James Bond will return in Live and Let Die. And like, yeah, they were making one. It was like with a different guy. But yeah, so I mean, I enjoy the 70s more than some of my contemporaries. And it's the 70s movies were different than the 60s, but
yeah, it's amazing how fast they change from the 60s to the 70s, though, isn't it? Because the tonal change, which I guess there was a tonal change with You Only Live Twice, but then with Diamonds Are Forever, it changed completely.
Yes. Yes, because I mean, they decided that I mean, today we consider Majesties one of the best
Mm,
movies of the series. But at the time, the box office had declined between Thunderbolt and Majesties. It declined quite a bit. And, David Picker at United Artists in particular was, like Broccoli and Saltzman wanted to have John Gavin and they wanted to make it more American Bond. And Picker, United Artists had more or less gone along with Eon and supplied the money, but with Diamonds Are Forever, they said, we're putting our foot down. It's like, bring Connery back. It's
mm.
like, we do not want John Gavin. And David Picker led that charge. And when Picker did his um, memoirs, he was like, well, he was taking his own victory lap. I saved the Bond series.
Right.
Um, yeah, so it just yeah, that was a big change because UA got more involved in creative stuff
Mm.
prior to the 6 previous films.
Okay, and there was something else I wanted to talk about, which is probably because because we haven't done one of these live streams for so long, and just wanted to cover a broad a number of topics in the limited time that we've got. But the other one was there are a couple of announcements or there were a couple of announcements from Ian Fleming publications, and
Yes.
the first is a third book from Anthony Horowitz, and that's set sometime, is it after the events of The Man with the Golden Gun or something like that?
That's right.
And I think that comes out in May. But there was another announcement, which is a new series of books. I think it's a trilogy, and they are set around a new influx of 00 agents, but 007 is missing, and he may be dead. Well, I guess with Daniel Craig gone, maybe that ties in quite nicely. But I don't know whether you noticed that in one of the releases just earlier in the week, said Meet the New Generation of Spies, Joanna Harwood, 003.
I noticed that, and also the 009 guy was named Bashir, and this is apparently a reference to a Star Trek spin-off show called Star Trek Deep Space Nine, where they had a character named Dr. Bashir who played spy on what they called the holodeck, and which is the holodeck is this thing that essentially simulates reality. And the episode was called Our Man Bashir. So they're like Bond references, but there are also other 60s spy references. That title is apparently, clearly a reference to Our Man Flint. Um, and then one of the agents was also called Dryden, who Dryden was that trader guy at the beginning of Casino Royale, which so I read that and I'm thinking, it's like I didn't want to jump on the Dryden thing, and I wasn't sure about Bashir. And then people reminded me about Deep Space Nine, and it's like that's awfully cute, and that's like unusually cute by Ian Fleming production standards. And I had an exchange with somebody on social media today about fan service, and I said, yeah, it's like with Bashir, that's not even James Bond fan service. That's a whole nother thing. um Johanna Harwood deserves a shout out. I mean,
Absolutely.
she works on the first 2 Bond films, and I even said when I did a post about this new series, that she's kind of a forgotten creative figure, and she's probably one of the few Dr. No key crew members still alive. She's in her 90s, but at the same time, boy, that's a little much for me. I don't know.
You, you don't like it.
Well, I can't evaluate the book until I see it, but it just seemed a little much for me in terms of naming the characters. I don't know.
And do you think you'll be interested in the book?
It's funny. Ian Fleming Publications sent out a tweet about it, and it's like, oh, it's like really great about Johanna Harwood. We'll see. I mean, clear. Okay, here's the other thing. So the Horowitz movie, I'm sorry, Horowitz book, is in the
Yeah,
Fleming
that would be
timeline.
breaking news, wouldn't it?
Yeah, so it's in the Fleming timeline, but apparently this new book, which will be in the fall and in September, is apparently time shifted to the present day because the plot has to do with some British billionaire who claims he can turn around climate change, and so it's like, okay, all right, this is clearly not set in the 60s like the Horowitz
This
books.
already sounds like Moonraker, though, doesn't it?
It does, doesn't it? It's but can this billionaire really do what he says? My guess is probably not, because if he really could do it, we'd probably know about it by now. Wonder if that one guy who didn't like me talking so much is still listening. Anyway, but yeah, we'll see. It sounds like it's bordering on fantasy, but
Yeah.
I don't know.
For me, I understand why they need to get books out there, new books out there, but yeah, it doesn't really sound like my cup of tea. But I don't know, maybe I'll read it and maybe I'll like it. So I don't really know who it's aimed at. That I think that's one of the things. Who are they aiming these books at hardcore Bond fans, or are they? In a way, it sounds like a young adult readership rather than an adult readership.
Well, somebody tweeted on Facebook, commented to me. It was like, I'm not going to buy a James Bond novel without James Bond in it, which is what they thought this was. And it's like, well, maybe. I mean, I might check it out, but the character name seemed an awful cute to me, and like cuter than, just, it's the kind of thing. Okay, Raymond Benson, when he did his continuation novels, he named side characters after friends of his. So, like a guy I know named Paul Bach was a henchman in the mountain climbing book, and he tries to kill Bond, and he ends up falling off the mountain, and in the real life, Paul Bach was very proud of that because the big line of dialogue as he's falling off the mountain is going "aye," and so he would always quote that. He was very fond of it.
But in fact, Ian Fleming used to do that. He used to
Yeah.
put his friends into his books as well.
Oh yeah. Oh man, I'm trying to remember them now, but yeah, that's absolutely true. But again, they were side characters. They weren't like the main. It wasn't like the main villain. It wasn't like a 00 agent. High Time to Kill, being James Bond, reminded me. Yes, being James Bond had a henchman named Paul Bach. Paul Bach was a real life friend of Raymond Benson. He was a real life friend of mine.
No, I haven't.
Yeah, but he had like guys like Tom Salinsky, like James McMahon. They all got characters named after him, but they weren't critical characters like this appears to be with the announcement that came out this week.
Yeah. So we'll see. I mean, I wasn't sure whether I was going to like Casino Royale before it came out because it didn't have the feeling of Bond that I was looking for in 2006. But then when I saw it, it blew me away. So you should never judge. You should never judge anything until you've actually experienced it properly.
There's a cliche that people don't know what they want until they have it. And Casino Royale was an example of that. Like, how's this going to work? Well, it worked out pretty well. It obviously worked out the best of the Craig films.
By a long way.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I think for me there was a lot of promise, and there were a lot of things said after Casino Royale which they never lived up to, and that was a real pity. There was the whole thing about doing away with gadgets and so on, which they held their nerve on that for 2 films, but then they took it in a different direction, and for me that was the wrong decision. Although Skyfall turned out to be the most popular Bond film ever, but.
We have a comment in the comment section. Dr. Brazier on DS9 is played by Alexander Siddig, whose nickname was Sid. So again, reinforces how this new character, this new 009 in the new novel, is clearly taken from Star Trek. Anyway. So Javi, thank you for reminding us of that.
I've got to say, Javi writes some reviews for my website on the Dynamite comics, which are very good. So if you're into the Bond comics, go and visit those.
Well, I think we're about out of time. We're almost out of the hour.
Before we wrap up, over 60 years of James Bond films, which actor do you think is closest to Ian Fleming's James Bond?
I would go with Dalton. Connery's my favorite Bond, but Dalton clearly really invested himself in the literary Bond, and I would go with that.
I'm going to say something that's going to be a bit controversial. I'm going to say David Niven. Because
Fleming supposedly talked up David Niven back in the day.
Because if James Bond from the books was Ian Fleming's alter ego, then the closest actor who has played Bond in any form to Ian Fleming was David Niven. He didn't quite have the same kind of privileged background, I think, but he went to private school and so on. He worked in intelligence, I think, during the Second World War, and he knew Ian Fleming. I don't think he knew him well, but I would say probably David Niven was closer to Ian Fleming's idea of Bond than Sean Connery, for example. But Sean Connery is Bond for me. Yeah.
James C. just turned back in and David is finally talking. Well, you should have been watching for the last 20 minutes, guy. Anyway, I've seen some books that claim that the first names that came up were David Niven, James Mason, and James Stewart. Now, the first 2 I can see, they're English, although they were older. James Stewart, really? Then I've seen some say, well, they probably meant Stuart Granger, but James Stewart is James Bond. You've never been to Istanbul? No, never. Well, the moonlight on the Bosphorus is irresistible. It's hard to imagine that James Stewart being James Bond, but whatever.
Well, okay, and we've taken it to the hour, and sorry about all my tech problems. I did actually run through everything this morning to make sure there wouldn't be any tech problems. But you know how it goes. Sometimes stuff just doesn't work. So thanks everybody who has joined us, and we'll try and do these a bit more often. And thank you. And great talking to you, Bill.
Great talking to you, David. It's been too long, and I really enjoyed it.
It has. Okay.
Take care.
Well, have a good weekend, and everybody who's been watching, you all have a great weekend too. See you.